everybody. It's great to see such a good crowd for our first Lunch and Learn this year. I'd like to introduce our two speakers today, Michelle Owens and Neva Hart. So Michelle Owens is the owner of this special quilt that we have here in the museum. If you haven't had a chance to go in and see it, please go see it before you leave here today. Neva Hart is a quilt historian and a retired textile appraiser. Anyway, I'll let them tell you the details of the quilt and how Michelle came to own the quilt. It's a very interesting story, but I want to tell you some about Michelle. I felt like I'd known her from the first minute I met her. She was born in Greensboro. She has always loved textiles, which reminds me of a sign my sister had, which said, "The one who dies with the most fabric wins." So that was what I thought of when I was talking to you. She sewed from a young age, Barbie doll clothes, embroidered, cross-stitched, candle wicked, crocheted, knitted, made her own clothes. Then she discovered quilting. She has been a member of the Piedmont Quilters Guild since 1999. Michelle has worked in textiles for almost 25 years at companies that bring this county to mind: Burlington Industries, Quilts, CT Nassau. She is currently employed at
Desley.
Okay, I was going to ask you how to say that. Thank you. That makes mattress fabrics. When I remarked on the 3 Alamance County connections, she said, "Oh, there's more." She has family buried in 2 cemeteries here in town. One is Linwood, the other is in Burlington, and her grandfather was a Gant, so there may be a Glen Raven connection. So, and her great-grandmother was a Fawcett. So here we have another Fawcett over here. So our second speaker is Neva Hart from Roanoke, Virginia. She's a quilt historian doing documentation with the Virginia Quilt Museum in Harrisonburg. She is also a retired textile appraiser. Neva told me that what she does best is research, sort of a quilt detective. Neva and Michelle met when Neva joined a quilt show to give appraisals, sort of an antiques roadshow for quilts. So I'd like for us to welcome both of them today. I'm honored that they have come to talk about this special quilt. So.
Thank you so much for the introduction, and thanks to the museum for having us here. This is a great chance to show it off because, well, in the long run, the more we talk about it, the more hopefully we will find out about the history of the quilt. So I'll put the glasses on. So Neva and I met. The quilt show, we had to book someone in to do appraisals. So I got Neva in. She said she could come. She said, "I'm going to need one assistant the whole time I'm there, and measurements, help me lay stuff out." I said, "Okay." I did not ask anyone to volunteer. I did it myself. That was my perk. But we have kept in touch over the years, and if there's something quilt related going on up near where she lives, I send it to her just in case she didn't know. If there's something going on down here, she sends it to me just in case I didn't know. So, in May of 2019, the North Carolina Museum of History was putting on an exhibit called Quilt Speak. Neva, my friend Linda, and I, we were going to go. So Neva drove down from Roanoke, picked us up. We headed to Raleigh. On the way, she asked, because Linda and I are from Guilford County, she asked, "Do you know about the quilt? It's a applique quilt. It's a rose, and it's pretty much exclusive to Alamance and Guilford County." And Linda and I said, "So?" So that's when I learned. And I'm going to call it Alamance Rose, and officially, if you find it in books, it's called Unknown Pattern or Unnamed Applique Rose. But I'm going to say Alamance Rose. So, and maybe I'll start a trend. Okay, so at the museum, they had the quilt hung up, and I'll send this around. But the information says only women from Alamance and Guilford counties made quilts of this pattern as far as scholars know. The 8-petaled rose with serrated leaves and 3 buds seems to have originated in the Gibsonville area. Even as newspapers and magazines spread fads across the nation at the turn of the 20th century, some quilt trends remained associated with a particular place. Did Mary May Mee see a similar quilt made by a relative or friend? So the lighting on this is kind of funny because it was in the museum, not the bright shiny lights. But you've got the yellowish ground and the leaves were more of a blue, but then you do have the pink and the red. And if you've been inside and seen my quilt, this is a bigger picture, but all the quilts that they know of have the same general parts and pieces. So I'll talk about that more. Send this around. Okay, so it was a great day. We had fun, we had to get lunch, we talked, and that was it. I did go home and look, and the North Carolina quilt book has this quilt in there, and actually if you have the hardback cover, it's on the back. So this was a different quilt. It's got a different sashing and a different border, but it's the same general colors. Now this one was made, they knew who made this one. This was Nancy Spoon Schaffner. I'm missing a name there. Nancy Stafford Spoon Schaffner of Alamance County. And of course, I noticed the big sign there that says Schaffner, so I know Alamance has got a lot of Schaffners. But this book has got a picture of her quilt, and there's one on the table there. And it's got a lot of information about Nancy and her son William Spoon, who was a surveyor. So, okay, so that's 2 quilts. It says there's 4 that's known. Now, so this one was part of the quilt documentation project, and you can look online at quiltindex.org, but they documented the quilts here in North Carolina between 1985 and 1986. And they are now all together in one place online, which I think would help quilt researchers like Neva have just one place to go instead of having to drive everywhere. So the questionnaire that they came with it was, I don't know, I think I printed out like 14 pages, and it asked everything from, you know, it documents the size of the blocks, the border, the backing. It asks, you know, your name, where did it come from, who made it, are there any important information about it. It's really a fun website to play around on if you have some time. So number 3, 2021, middle of the pandemic, I was watching on PBS North Carolina Weekend and not planning to go anywhere, but anyway, they show the Island Farm Museum, which is in Manteo on Roanoke Island, and they pan across the bedroom, and I about dropped. There was on the bed a quilt, an Alamance Rose quilt. The good thing with all these different borders and different sashings, you know that you're not looking at the same quilt. So here's a good picture. The lady who took the picture is kind of funny. This is her. So ignore that. That's not part of the quilt. But this one is very bright. I mean, you can see the colors are just amazing, and I really like that rickrack. So this is number 3. So I sent screenshots to Neva and everything. We got excited. We contacted the museum, but since it was in the middle of the pandemic, they were closed, so we didn't hear back from them for quite a while. But we later did find out that one of their supporters purchased it at the Reedy Real Estate sale in 2010 and then donated it to the museum. And that's the Henry Twitty House up in Warrenton, North Carolina. So there's another question on the list. Where's the Warrenton connection? How did that come into play? Did someone from Alamance go up there and bring their quilt? Did someone visit and see someone's quilt down here? I will say I was reading up on this yesterday just to make sure I had all my stuff ready, and the house originally was built for the daughter and husband of Francis Scott Key, but had been in the Twitty family for 100 years. When they originally bought it 100 years ago, the architect that updated the house was a Holt. So, anyway, so we know of 3 quilts. In May of 2022, there's a website called estatesales.net, I think, and I don't have any room in my house for anything else, but I still like to go through and look at the pretty pictures and imagine that I will one day need one of those big buffets in my imaginary dining room. But I see folded over the arm of a chair a quilt, and I freaked out while I was working. So I sent, I hope my boss doesn't see this. I took a screenshot and sent it to Neva with a link, and I said, "Is this what I think it is?" And I get a text back, all caps, "Call me now." So I got my phone and went to the conference room, the small conference room, and called her. And the more excited she got, the more excited I got. So I took a half-day vacation. I told my boss, I said, "I've got a thing I need to take care of." She's like, "Oh, yeah. I'm like, I'm not lying. I did." So I go to the estate sale. It's raining, and it said that it would be canceled if it was raining. I'm like, but how much rain? Okay. So I go. We're all standing outside. I'm trying to look at the building. The downstairs windows have like the big plantation shutters, and the upstairs windows have shutters, but they also have curtains. You can see the curtains, and I was like, there were curtains in the picture. So the door opened. Everybody went towards the living room and dining room. I took off up the stairs. I get to the first bedroom, nothing. The second room, nothing. The third room, there it was. I ran in, I scooped it up, and I couldn't breathe. I thought I was gonna have a heart attack. I didn't know if it was from excitement, adrenaline, running up the stairs. But then I go to look to see the price. I'd asked Neva, what should I pay? And I had an idea. I looked down. Well, first of all, my glasses were in. I couldn't see anything. So then I put my glasses down on my face. They fogged up immediately. I still can't see it. So I used the quilt to clean my glasses.
This quilt?
I was in a tizzy. So finally I see, and it was only $25.
Oh my God.
Which I keep saying made me both very happy and very sad. Very happy that I was now going to own this quilt for $25, but very sad that they felt it was only worth $25. So, this is my quilt, and if you've been to the museum, you've seen it. We think maybe it's like the baby of the group, because it's also in really good shape. The leaves aren't attached at the bottom, which they are in many of the other ones, and the quilting is just an outline. And some of these pictures you can see that they've done a lot of elaborate quilting on there. The house was owned, so I don't know how familiar you are with Greensboro, but when you go Wendover Avenue and Moses Cone Hospital would be on your right. Over here on your left, it's Virginia Street. So it's on one of those streets over there. And well, I did some, I don't want to call it stalking, but I did some research, and it was the estate of Anne McBain Vaden, and she had passed away in December of 2021. And she had been an interior designer and had owned an antique store. That's why everyone else was going, because that living room, dining room were full of her knickknacks, antiques, porcelain. That's what they were going for. We kind of think that this was a special quilt because she did have all the porcelain and such, but this is the only quilt. So my thinking is it was a family piece.
McBain is a
Yes.
It's Alamance.
County.
Yeah.
southern element.
So we've I did some more. She was born in 1927 in Greensboro, and her husband was William A. Vaden. He was a judge, and then she had a brother, Marion Graham McBain. Her mother is Georgia Russell McBain, and she was born in 1899 in Newland Township here in Alamance County, and she died in 1988 in Greensboro. She was living at the Masonic and Eastern Star home. Georgia is the possible quilt maker. It would be right, she would have made it when she was young, but it would have been her age range. Her husband was John O.D. McBain. And I found that there are a lot of John McBains, and so that's why they always have the middle initials or the middle name there. He was also born in Alamance County and passed away in Greensboro in 1951. George's mother was Mary Roduska Cates Russell, and she was born in 1856 in Hadley Township in Chatham County. And she passed away in Newland Township in Alamance. So, did Mary get her started on this? Did she? I don't know. There's just so many questions, which is fun and very, very annoying. I mean, sorry, very, very interesting. So I will go ahead and tell you. So we found those 4 examples. Were those the only 4? Well, we found another one, and another one, another one.
Oh.
So we've now gotten up to 14, and as of last night, 15. So,
And they're
there's
all local.
all except for the weird beach one. But
Well,
you know,
Warrenton,
like,
yeah.
my friend likes the beach more than the mountains. It's okay.
Warrenton's not at the beach.
So this book here, this is Southern Quilts, and it has pictures of some of the other examples,
Oh, okay.
but not all of them. We still found them. You can look at this later if you'd like. Here's photographs of some, and I can send this around. This lady owns 2. Now, you can see the green has faded, and if that was a pink, it's pretty much faded to white. And she has this one, which is on a white with black polka dot ground. So this person did their own thing. But I will tell you, so what we look at here is, I've been calling them kissing cousins. They all have, here it is. They all have this 8-lobed flower, and then it has multiple layers inside of different colors. Mine has 4. This one has 3. I think most of them have 3. They all have these 6 little leaves around here, and they're on the stem with 6 leaves below, and then they have the little rosebuds up. Now mine, I don't know if she ran out of room, or ran out of fabric, or ran out of interest, but I don't have rosebuds in these 2, but I do have it in the top one. These are connected down here. Mine are also not connected. But, and again, they have different, this one doesn't have a border at all. Some of them have borders on just one side, maybe like it was on a bed that was pushed up against a wall. Mine has all 3 sides, and mine also has this thing, and I'm calling it a beard cover because it is an extra sleeve on the top that's green, and I say, you know, when Grandpa got into bed, his beard still had sweat and dirt and last night's dinner, and he pulled it up. She was protecting the top of the quilt. So, but that may not be what it's for. I'm guessing.
And the yellow.
And the yellow. They all
Yellow.
the yellow ground, except for the polka dot. But that's, you know, that's the black sheep of the family. The squares are like 24 inches square approximately. They are either 6 or 9. I I guess depending on what size bed they needed it on. This one, they're all going this way. Mine has 6, and they're all going towards the center. So you'll see there's a great variety on how they're laid out.
Is the background fabric always yellow?
It is mostly yellow. There's, like I said, the one, the polka dotted one, the black sheet. But otherwise, they're all yellow. And I've met with Bill Vincent at the Alamance Museum about the yellow, and it's also called Alamance Yellow. And he said that he felt that it was being made at the Alamance Cotton Mill, which is in Alamance, just south of 85. It burnt down in the 1800s, and then they rebuilt it. He has a quilt in his collection that has the Alamance yellow, but his yellow is darker than my yellow. So again, for being in the industry, commercial match, I guess they didn't care because it's not a commercial match, but it's still really pretty. So I don't know, I just really got into the history. My mother's a big fan of history, and like I said, I really love quilts, and I can't make enough quilts, so then I started looking at antique quilts. Neva suggested, oh, we should research this and write an article. I don't know what she was drinking that night. So this is where it comes to. We have questions, and we keep asking people, and I joke that we've asked 1,000 people, we've turned over 1,000 rocks, but eventually we're going to turn over that 1,337th rock, and there's going to be our answer. So we're going to keep turning over rocks, but we have questions such as, where did the original pattern come from? How did they share the pattern? Where did they come up with the color scheme? Did they go over to someone's grandmother's house and say, oh, I really like those curtains, let's make quilts like that? The quilt ages range from, we're saying like 1880 to 1920. And again, so that's a big range. It's not like we all got together today and made a whole bunch of quilts and they would all be 2023. No, so did someone see someone's mother's quilt? And that's, you know, my Mary Georgia, did she see someone's mother's quilt? And that's what she wanted to copy. There is another quilt we found. This was sold at an auction out of Mebane. And it is another quilt, and again, it's not one that we have in the books and such because it has a different order. This one says that it was circa 1840.
But we don't believe that.
Yeah.
Well, John Lambert's not a quilt person. He's a pottery person.
Well, we've got pictures.
Yeah, so you know, someone
But
could say, well, I
John's
remember my great-grandmother telling me that her great-grandmother's great-grandmother made it. And if you don't know the research on the fabric, which you can tell a lot with prints because you know what things were popular. You know, 1976, there's so many things with flags and stars, and you know, for the bicentennial, that these are solid colors. You don't have as much specificity there. But this is made, and I will tell you, this one I did not buy because it sold for $1,200. So we have a range.
You were lucky. Did you interview any of the McBain family?
She had children, but they were not from around here, and because they didn't know anything about the quilt, or else they wouldn't have let it go and have stay south. But all of y'all may know Uncle Eli's down south, and they do the quilting party every year. So I got in touch with Wendy McBain, and that's her dad was John Franklin, John Frank McBain. So again, middle names. And actually, I looked at the census, and my John O.D. and her John Frank lived 3 houses apart, so they knew each other. So they might be related. They're probably related somewhere back. She did not have any direct information on the quilts either. So we're looking at things. We're looking for churches. We sent letters to the churches in this area. All of Ann McBain's family are buried at the Mount Olive Church. But we have also found them buried, other quilt makers buried at different churches across the county. So they didn't all go to the same church. So it wasn't a church. I have quilts from my grandmother, and they had a sewing bee at their church. This is not the situation. Most of them were farmers' wives, but not every single one of them. We asked the churches, do you have any older members who may know of this? We have not really gotten any answers on that. We checked with the Textile Heritage Museum in Glencoe, and go talk to them again today, but it was mainly information on plaids that I could find. Again, I met with Bill Vincent at the Historic Museum, and he did not have anything specific about this pattern, but he had it about the yellow color. Since Georgia died at the Masonic home, maybe all the farmers were Masons. So we did. I've got 2 contacts there, and so I'm going to give them a call and see if they can give me any information. But we're looking at, was there an agricultural fair? They saw the pattern there and copied it. Was it a farm organization?
Right.
Was it a charity sew, a money maker? And they gave out the patterns. Maybe the Farm Bureau gave out the patterns. We have found, like I said, there's lots of questions, not so many answers, but we keep asking them. Neva, do you want to?
The Gibsonville Rose.
Oh, yeah. So Gibsonville is known as the town of roses, and their logo is really, really similar to that 8-lobed rose. Apparently, the 2 daughters of one of the rich guys in town planted rose bushes all along the railroad tracks, and apparently they tore them up, and everybody got upset, so they replanted it. But that is now the town of Gibsonville's logo. So is that the connection? But all of the other stuff, and that serrated leaf, like on a rose, Neva's thrown out. Was it a tobacco instead of rose? Was it a tobacco leaf and tobacco flowers? But I don't know. I've named her Rosie, so I'm going with the rose bud. Any questions? Anything you want to add, Neva? Or
We found another quilt last night. Thank you. You saved our research. I'm so sorry.
No.
I thought I had that taken care of. That's fine. Okay, so we've been able to locate these quilts. Thank you. Right along the Guilford and Alamance County line. We know where these ladies lived through the census records. Yes. We feel confident they know each other, or they knew each other. They're mostly farm wives, and they all were dedicated religious women, maybe not all the same church, but they all have a connection to their churches. So there's got to be some connection. These patterns are the same size. They use the same color scheme. They have cultural things in common. But now what? Did the hotel burn and the hotel needed quilts? Did the orphanage need quilts? Why were all these quilts made? And the one that we uncovered last night is very different, but it's the same color scheme and was made in 1988. Now this lady was known, this was Nanny Pritchett. She was from, she's buried in Apples Chapel cemetery, so she was up from that direction up north of Gibsonville. But she participated with quilting in Greensboro, and she died at the age of 101. I think she knew somebody.
Her daughters are still.
It's same colors, same concept. So there's got to be a master plan somewhere, and we're just curious.
It was a challenge.
It's just, did you know her?
No.
Okay, so if anybody, we can give you names. The Isleys were
Oh, yeah.
involved. Ruby Pentecost was involved. The Schaffners, there were so many, we haven't been able to weed those out. But we're about one generation behind people who are going to have some firsthand knowledge. So we are quilt detectives, and if any of you recognize any of these names or the churches, the more people we talk to, the more people will be able to help us.
Nancy Pritchard was in Piedmont Quilters.
Yeah, I found an old membership book, and at that time her address was listed at a nursing home.
Well,
And-
she lived in Brown Summit, and her daughter brought her to the Guild a couple of times.
Okay.
And I have contact in Brown Summit that I can maybe help you to get.
I know we
Yeah,
have
meeting
one
with
of her
him.
daughters, Mitzi, I can't remember her name right off the bat, but one of her daughters is now in Raleigh, but she's in her 80s, and we're going to try to get in touch with her and see if she can help us any. Is that the daughter
I
that?
don't remember the daughter's name, and somehow or another I'm kin to Nanny, but I don't know any more
Well, there were
about
two
her than
Nanny
that.
Pritchards. So
The
that was
quilt-
the
the
other
quilt-
question. Everybody's, in Virginia, everybody's
there
named
is
Mary down
yeah,
here,
but
though.
there's a nanny that's an ancestor as well, but not the one I'm talking about.
Okay.
But this nanny was, she was just like the godmother of the whole, she was very
Very
involved.
active.
And I would say home demonstration, very involved with home demonstration stuff.
So the annual report for the home demonstration agency, both in Guilford and Alamance, they had an annual report, and it did not feature, their programs did not feature quilting. They figured everybody already knew how to do it. So they were featuring nutrition, canning, sanitation at the home, gardening, and that kind of projects during this time frame that we're looking at. There was nothing in their many annual reports about quilting. I was thinking that would be
I'll talk to one of my friends out there
okay.
that I know very well. That's
Great.
92 or 3.
Well, we're a little behind, yes,
Yeah.
but it's curious. We're just curious. There's no ulterior motive here other than curiosity.
What a fun little
Yeah.
game you're playing.
Yeah. So started out nice little project. But this is fun because I get to take the quilt around and you said we did it. My grandmother taught me embroidery. I joked with my mom that Granny wanted me to just sit down and shut up for 5 minutes. And it didn't work. So I'm having fun.
Now, does anybody know Ben Greason? Did anyone know Ben Greason? All right, his family had a quilt, but we can't find any relatives.
Are you saying Greason?
Greason.
Okay, Greason's at the edge of Guilford County as well.
He lived over on Beaver Creek before the lake, and then he's buried at the brick church. So,
And there's a
You know.
Greason Road and like an old family house down there. But
there are a lot of
Bill at Alamance was looking into it. He found some information on Ruby Pentecost grandson and his wife. And so I called them, but they were going to look. They still have the old house, and they were going to look in it, but they've not called me back yet. So
There's a spring, I don't know the rest of the word that goes with the spring, but it's a Presbyterian church, and Greason's are around that, right at the corner of 85,
okay.
and right at the edge of Guilford County. So that put it almost to Gibsonville up there.
Yes, yes. I mean, we've got the census, we've got some
Springwood.
old maps, we've got,
Springwood, okay, yes, that's it.
yeah, and we've got old maps, and we can locate these people's homes. Some of them aren't there anymore, but, you know, we know where they used to live, and that they all live within like 20 miles of each other. These ladies knew each other, and they, you know, and the yellow is interesting. Quilters know this color is Alamance yellow. The textile industry never heard of it. Where'd we get it? Where'd we figure that out? So,
I have a quilt that was in that same symposium project.
Okay.
I bought it from, I have booth.
Oh, the
up at
documentation.
Constraint. Yeah, I have the document, I have the quilt too.
right, but it was a documentation project, not
Yes.
the symposium.
Well, it was by the North Carolina
Symposium?
Symposium. That's what the label says on the back of my
They
quilt.
sponsored the documentation.
Mhm.
Okay, got it.
And so the one I have is a Wigs defeat, and it was from Sampson County. So I have a lot of names. I got it from somebody that bought it from the state sale in Winston. Now these things do travel around, and I've seen a lot of different wigs quilt patterns too.
It's a southern pattern.
Yeah.
We do have some that have come up in, is with family in Louisiana,
Mhm.
and then there was a Texas one too. Right.
It's all dealers. They
Yeah.
bought them here to
Yeah.
show.
So bring them back.
Another place that might be, I know they're doing some things at Snow Campground.
Yeah.
For the sort of piece, they're gearing up to have the play again, and that'll be the week of the 4th of July. But they're having events before then down there,
Okay.
like an afternoon, just an activity afternoon, music and different things.
Okay. Thank you. I'll check into that. So inside were little flyers with we have a email address, and we have our numbers on there too. But if you want to pick one up and just hold on to it, and then one day you're going to be that stone, and you're going to have that answer, and you're going to call us and go, send me a text, call me
Now.
and I'll do it. Oh, actually, tell me what it's about, so that telemarketer. Is there any other questions? Anything?
And we're open to suggestions.
Yeah.
Tell us what we haven't figured out.
Are they all in a certain group together? Like I was thinking the Masonic Temple has a lot of images and things like that. So is that not necessarily the Masons, but is there a certain organization that somehow they were all affiliated with that particular organization
We haven't
that
found it.
would
Not that we've
tie them
uncovered.
together?
If they all lived in Gibsonville, we could blame it on that
There you go.
Gibsonville Rose, but they don't. And they don't all come from there, so.
Well, if they were farmers' wives, I would think the Grange would be a good connection between them all. So,
I've looked through the Masonic in Alamance has a list of all their members from the past. None of these husbands were Masons. Now that doesn't mean it's a complete
Masons
list
tend to be
and
more professional and stuff.
right,
so farmers.
exactly,
Yeah.
precisely. The Grange doesn't have the
John was, so that would be the husband of the lady who made my quilt. And he was with Lodge in Greensboro, and so that's how she was able to live in the home.
I mean, he was a pharmacist in Burlington.
Baby one?
Yeah,
No,
the
McBain.
husband, John O.D. McBain was a pharmacist up until 1950, I think, in Burlington.
But baby
Now,
was a
and wait,
judge.
and yeah, so we know where they live, nowhere near where all these other ladies live. So how did she get? But everybody goes to pharmacy and talks to people. Well, so now you can give me some ideas. Did the people from Alamance, Grand, Gibsonville shop in Burlington?
Probably occasionally.
It would be a big deal.
It'd be a trip.
It would be a trip and a really big deal,
Right.
but I would imagine
Did
that there was
any of the
some
mills
there.
decide that they had a particular fabric that they wanted to market? And so they gave it to these ladies to make quilts, and here's a pattern. did, maybe there was a contest at the Alamance County Fair, and nobody's got it. If anybody knows how I can get records to look through for the Alamance County Fair, I would really be appreciative. Because the newspaper articles say, yes, we had the fair, there were so many entries in the domestic category, we can't list them.
Which of the mills make solids?
Well, that's what we were saying. The Alamance Cotton Factory in Alamance is what Bill Vincent had said. And you know, there's so many, you know, like Glencoe with the plaids, and then of course once.
So somewhere in the history of the mill, maybe you've looked at it, I don't know.
And a lot of the mill records are mostly personnel, products, how many spindles they had, where, you know, but nothing about the actual product that they produce.
I wonder if the North Carolina State Fair.
That was actually it did start in 1850. I've looked through the newspaper articles of the winners of the fair for the domestic category. They don't list enough detail about the winning quilt.
Mm-hmm.
They have a rose quilt. Well, there are a lot of rose patterns.
Yeah.
So I haven't gotten very far. I didn't get much out of that, but that doesn't mean the answer's not
You
there.
haven't turned enough stones there.
Yeah, unfortunately, like if you try to look on the sites and they're like, oh, you can search here. If you put in quilts, you really don't find. You find like free quilted bedspreads, but not much about quilt. There was a quilting bee. Or if you put in textiles, oh, you get a ton, but none of it relates to quilting. So it may go into that category of women's work. Yeah.
I'm in the back and I can't hear it very well anyway, but I think whoever were asked were making the comments about the Alamance Cotton Mill in Alamance. That was started by E.M. Holt in 1837. So the Nevin auction paper said circa 1840. I think that's too young. I mean, too early for that. They were actually making Alamance plaids in Alamance before they made it in Lincoln. So that is probably not an accurate date for that particular quilt. That's just an uneducated
We agree
guess.
with you.
Yeah.
Okay, I couldn't hear if y'all covered that or not. So I don't know if E.M. Holt was making doesn't mean that yellow solid was not made later, but you know, early on, as early as 1840, it was not.
Okay. Thank you.
Oh, yeah.
Have you been to the Raleigh Historical Museum? They have quite a collection
The Museum of History, the North Carolina Museum of History in Raleigh?
Yes.
Yes, we've been there. We've talked with them. They know what we're researching. But if there's a Raleigh Historical Museum, no,
Yes.
we haven't.
Okay.
Says there is.
Also, the Holt that built the house at Warren,
Thank you.
Yeah.
he built all over that section. He was, because I get pictures all the time on Facebook of houses that are attributed to him.
Yeah, there was old house website that I was on. Oh, because that's when I went down the rabbit hole. Apparently someone commented, you know, that he had done so many, and that they could just tell, even if they hadn't added in the information, you know, just the pictures that it was one of his houses. So yeah, so he might be like he threw away textiles and went with architecture. I did just think it was ironic that it was another that whole thing came up again. Anything else, or
Well, thank you for your
Yeah.
help.
thanks for coming
I
out.
know you'll be able to help us.
Like I said, you never know. You might go, oh, I'll never see it. But if you just hold that piece of paper, and one day, just like looking through the estate sales website, you're going to go, that's it.
I think I found it.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you everyone for coming. Please come inside and see all the quilts if you have not, and continue the conversation. Thank you.
Well, somebody